how do I say this without going to jail? Perks of working for the government. There are things in place where we, regardless of our phones, regardless of whatever we have, we're under surveillance 24/7. And that's not just us, that's other governments, that's literally, you name it. We are in a surveillance age.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the DP Podcast. Joining me today is one of my best friends. I've been with him all around the world. One of the baddest bassists I've ever seen. Bad guitarist. Badass motherfucking drummer. And without further ado, let me introduce my boy, Joshua McClanahan.
Minus the drummer part.
Bro, I've heard you play drums. You've been playing drums? Nah, you can play drums?
Nah, I don't play drums no more.
Hey, better than 99% of the population.
I've retired as a drummer.
But bro, something we talked about just to start off the podcast before we even get into any of the serious business, but you and I talked about how OnlyFans is a scam. Because that shit, man. Because I personally have subscribed to some porn stars or people that I'm like, hey, I'm very interested in your work, into your art. And I'll subscribe to them, and the stuff they are showing is just like very subpar, like all clothing, no sex, like what I can see for free for porn does not justify the $5 to $14 to $20 to $30 that these women are charging per month.
What a way to start off a podcast. I'm just saying, I'd expect nothing less from you.
Bro, it's just something that I've wanted to talk to you about for a while because both of us have complained about it. And, you know, a lot of women, especially during this COVID time, we've seen an increase of women doing OnlyFans to get money. And to me, I'm like, okay, why should I pay for something I can get for free, if not better, when these women are giving subpar? Like, for example, I don't want to throw any porn stars under the bus, but I subscribe to this one porn star, and all of
What's
her
her
videos,
name?
Danny Lynn, but all of her content was subpar. The videos of her getting fucked by her boyfriend were just terrible, like 480p. Like, you couldn't see what you wanted to see. There was no money shots. It was undercover. It was just, yeah. And I'm just like, why am I paying to see this shit? Like, look, the reason why I started paying is because I'm obviously a fan, OnlyFans. I'm a fan of their work. And then now that I've seen what they have to offer, it's bullshit. So what I'm saying is, what's the point? And you have also kind of pressed this concern to me because when we talk about it, we're both like, yo,
So
none of these porn stars or people who are just amateurs post anything good.
So
and it's like, hey, what is this?
I had to check it out when it became a thing. I had to check it out. And needless to say, not impressed.
Why though?
It wasn't anything. It was like Instagram stuff on another site that you had to like pay for. And it was stupid. Mm-hmm. So from there on out, I never did it again. But it was a giant waste of money. Like, and I think it was just.
It's funny when you, sorry to interrupt, but it's so funny when you say a giant waste of money because really, like, some of these people, especially during COVID, were doing like $5 specials up to $15, $20, and it's like, oh, this small amount of money is not worth it to me. And I think it's because we're so used to getting like some pretty raunchy stuff to satisfy our disgusting male minds from things such as X videos, Pornhub.
That's a whole other conversation. But OnlyFans is just like, it's a highway robbery. Like, here is, first you have to pay to get on the site. Then you have to pay for everything once you're in the site. Like, that makes no sense. But what it ultimately is, it's like for those rich dudes that fly the girls out in the Middle East. Like, that's what it is. It's a way for them to get in contact and actually have a chance.
But that's the thing is, I want to meet someone that's actually like, oh yeah, OnlyFans, like I love it, you know, because I know you can talk to the person behind the account, and you can be like, oh hey, what's up? Try to build a relationship. Like, are these guys just in this fantasy world where they're like trying to imagine themselves married to this person, having a family with them, or what? What is this?
I wish I knew, but it's like it's playing more to the male psyche, where it's just like, oh, you can get a little more control than what you have on a website, than what you have on anything else that you subscribe to me in. It's just like there's a little bit extra. Oh, now you can actually talk to me.
Yeah, that's basically what you're paying for, because the content they give is like them in bikini shots or like naked, topless, or full frontal, but it's nothing that we can't get from just going to
Google search.
Yeah, Google search.
Like, literally, think of it this way. And like, I'm gonna throw my wife under the bus for 2 seconds, but it's just like Justin Bieber showed his dick like to the world, and it's just like that's a Google search away. And like, you talk to girls, they're like, oh my god, I had to go see, just see what it was, and it's just like that's how easily accessible anything we want is now. It's like, how many girls are taking off their clothes? How many girls are showing anything and everything, having sex, whatever, so quickly? It's just like, you don't have to pay for it anymore.
And you can go to Reddit and see half that stuff.
Well, most people don't know what Reddit is. Reddit is still pretty underground, all things considered.
You're right about that, but after the Reddit thing, but moving to another topic is, have you been on Reddit much?
Me, no. Nah, not my thing.
I've ever since the Wall Street Bets thing, I've been getting more and more into it. But before we get into that, sorry, we've been drinking a little bit. But before we get into that, you know what's something I've actually been watching? Well, I saw the first episode of this morning before coming over to your place.
What did you watch?
So do you know who Woody Allen is?
Yeah, the actor, right?
He's actually a director.
Oh, it shows how much I pay attention to Hollywood.
But it's understandable. He's like an actor that like made a lot of influential films in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. He was making a film every year.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And like the thing that kind of threw him into the limelight, like in infamy, was the fact that he married his stepdaughter. Or like his daughter or something like that, right?
Whoa. Jeez.
Yeah. That's what the news was. At least that's what I know, as much as I know.
Talk about keeping it close to home.
Well, apparently they released this HBO documentary.
What? 10 ways to fall in love with your stepdaughter or daughter?
No, apparently.
Hold on, I got to do a Google search and see who he married.
Go ahead. He married...
Because stepdaughter is one thing, daughter is another thing.
But he ended up actually marrying this woman who seemed just as crazy as him, but I think he out-crazied her. But he married this woman who adopted like a bunch of kids on top of having her own kids. Let
me correct you before we move forward. So he married Soon Yi Previn, who was, I can't even, I'm not going to pretend.
I'm going to get to that.
Mess up his name. But she was the adopted daughter of the actress that Woody Allen was with.
So the first episode is out right now. As of this podcast, every Sunday there's a new episode. So if you guys have HBO, I highly recommend it. But one of the interesting things was what he just said was at the end of the podcast, of the episode, it talks about how he married this woman, Soon Yi. But apparently he was also molesting one of the underage stepdaughters. So this went deeper than ever. So this whole documentary just goes to show how how fucked up Hollywood is. Sorry, before recording this podcast, we had a couple drinks, and I'm just hiccuping. My diaphragm is a bitch for alcohol.
Yeah, you've always been that way.
This guy. But basically what I'm saying is just like, it's just crazy to see this type of...
How does that surprise you after not even just Epstein. Epstein wasn't really Hollywood. But what was the other guy?
What you got?
The other
Woody
director?
Allen, the one you showed me.
No, who was the other guy in Hollywood?
There's so many. Like Bryan Singer has been accused of molesting little
Not
children.
that one. Who was the other prevalent one? The one with Jennifer Lawrence and like everybody was shouting out.
What's his face? Harvey Weinstein. He was a producer.
How does that surprise you?
Well, you know what's funny? Like something we haven't talked about it, and I didn't even realize this till you told me, was when the whole Epstein thing was coming out, was that I was one of the ones that kind of brought it out to you, because I was like, oh yeah, Pizzagate.
Yeah, and then you got that from Alex Jones, right?
Yeah, Alex Jones.
How crazy is that? Let's rewind for a second. The man that everybody's pegged as absolutely insane comes out with like Pizzagate for years. Nobody listens, and then all of a sudden, here Jeffrey Epstein is with Sex Island.
Yeah, it's really insane, because I mean, even Ghislaine Maxwell, she's going under trial right now for what she did. Because
I'm surprised they haven't killed her yet.
Yeah, and I heard this from the Tim Dillon podcast, but I'm not sure if it's true.
That Robin Hood CEO is her son.
Yeah,
it's not true. Tim's just messing with it.
Yeah, I thought so. But like, it's very interesting to me when I see the whole Ghislaine Maxwell thing and Jeffrey Epstein, because I'm like, man, these people were trafficking young women to entrap not only the science community but the political community and everything. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein had like a freaking a picture or a
portrait of Clinton.
Yeah, a portrait of Clinton, exactly, naked, just in front of him, and I'm like, what the fuck is this guy?
All control.
Well, like, man, it's just crazy to me that this stuff exists. And I told you about this back in like 2015 and 2020. It starts coming out, and it's true.
You did tell me. Where were we? Indonesia or
Bahrain?
Bahrain. Yeah, I remember that, and I was like, Daniel, you're crazy. Ah, ha, 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 ha. Here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, man, it's insane to me. But just to move on to something else, that was very interesting to me is in the last podcast I had talked to somebody about how they're willing to give up what little privacy they have for convenience, to be able to use apps. For example, he said, I have a Google phone, and using Google, like, hey Google, blah blah blah, and then Google just comes up with this information and gives it to him. But it's getting all this information and selling it off. So it's like, oh, you're under surveillance all the time, and we're going into this age where people are willing to give up.
Well, let's be real. We've been under surveillance for a long time. Like, what's his name came out? Snowden came out and whistle blew that. What was that? Close to 10 years ago. And so ever since then, ever since we started using smartphones, and probably a little before then, like, we've been under surveillance. Okay, how do I say this without going to jail? The perks of working for the government. There are things in place where we, regardless of our phones, regardless of whatever we have, we're under surveillance 24/7. And that's not just us, that's other governments, that's literally, you name it. We are in a surveillance age. That's just what we've come up with. If you don't stop hiccuping.
Sorry.
The background of this, I see your little wave files just.
Bro, I'm sorry. I haven't
Pull it together.
drank this hard in a minute. Bro, okay, so for the people listening, just sidetrack. Josh just made me some drinks the way we used to make them.
Apparently, Daniel don't drink the way we used
I
to
don't.
drink.
I don't drink like how we used to. So they're hitting me, as you can hear.
You want some water, bro?
I'm okay. But anyways, no, I definitely think you're right. It's very interesting to see how we're going in as a society and kind of just accepting it.
I mean, the train of thought is, what can I do to stop it? And ultimately, there's not much. There's not much you can do to stop it. But then at the same time, my problem isn't necessarily government, because government doesn't get involved unless they have to. My problem is private corporations. Facebook, Amazon, Google, those three big heads surveil everybody.
Well, have you seen the recent development with Facebook when it comes to, for example, Australia? They're stopping Facebook from advertising news for free, and now they're charging them and doing all these things. Or, for example, one big thing that Apple's pushing with Tim Cook as their CEO is privacy, and they're like, hey, we don't want to sell people's information to you.
Yep.
We want to keep that private. So that puts a big damper on Facebook because Mark Zuckerberg is trying to sell all of our info to people for advertisement and things like that, and Tim Cook's trying to stop that.
Zuckerberg is the example of one power-hungry, like, little man. You know the dudes that have little man syndrome? Like, you could tell he had just been shat upon his entire life. And, like, he finally, he came up with social media.
Well, he came up with Facebook just to meet a girl. You know that? Just so that
it
you
always
can talk to girls.
That's how Hitler started, right?
For pussy, man.
Hitler killed a bunch of Jews for a girl. So, I'm just kidding. That's not at all. It's
a joke, people. It's a joke, not a dick.
Yeah, don't cancel me. But that is why Hitler started hating the Jews. Because he was dating that young Jewish girl back in the day.
I thought it was because it wasn't accepted into art school from the Jews.
It's probably a good amount of that, but how many men have gone crazy because of a girl? Like, that type of rage can only come from one place.
One thing that I learned, like, people always talk about, like, oh, marijuana is a gateway drug. Marijuana is a gateway drug, right?
Women are the gateway drug.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Because if you see a woman and she has an 8-ball of Coke, she's like, yo, smoke this or snort this 8-ball, you're going to be like, yeah, no problem. I Captain, I'm going to lick that pussy after, too.
Yeah, since Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of time.
But, bro, one of the things that we were talking about before we started the podcast was just about how different countries are to the U.S.
Okay.
Not only in, like, social aspects or food, but like when it comes to racism, because your girlfriend was kind of like, damn, this is crazy shit.
Jesus.
Sorry, your wife.
Jesus,
your wife.
How dare you?
Sorry, your wife was saying, like, wow, because I was telling her a story about how like when we would wait for a taxi, one time we were out in the snow because we're in China up north.
You are all over the place. The alcohol's taking effect.
For sure.
When we're outside waiting for a taxi, nobody knows that you're talking about in 30-degree weather, actually below 30-degree weather, in the middle of China.
In the snow.
In the snow. It was probably like 0 degrees, literally 0 degrees, middle of China. And I'll give my perspective first, and you can tell your friend's story. But basically, I'd be outside waiting for like an hour to get a taxi because here I am, this giant black guy, and nobody wanted to come pick me up. So I would have to go get my white singer to come outside, hail down a taxi because they love white people. And so they'd stop, and then I'd get in the car and tell them where to go. Like, it was crazy. Like, China does not like black people.
Yeah, and I mean, the same situation with me was, like, you'd have people that, or I guess band members that were African-American that would stop or try to stop a taxi so we could get somewhere, and they would stop the taxi, and then a Chinese person would just get in and take the taxi wherever they needed to go instead of like allowing us to tell them where to go or get in and saying, hey, we ordered this taxi originally.
Yeah, it really was like that. China, like, people here, there's some racist stuff that goes down. But on a scale of 1 to 10, comparatively speaking to the rest of the world, we are at like level 1.5 compared to like some of the real racism that goes on. You got to think, like Russia, when I was there, they hate everybody. There's not anybody that, if you do not look like them and you do not speak the language, they're racist. Black people there are considered niggers. And I'm black, I can say that. that's how they consider black people. Like that's their name. It's like when I met my ex's granddad, he was like, "Oh, nigger," and I'm like, call me that again, call me that again." And but that's just how they're trained. Like not trained, but that's the culture there. That's what they think of black people. And so I got into a couple of issues. One time I'm in Russia. I'm on the bus with my ex, and she starts just getting mad. Like she's not telling me why she's mad, but you could just tell the look on her face. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "These people are talking mess about you." And I'm like, "Oh, ignore it." And she's like, no, that's not right. She proceeds to get in a full war with these two old people. And mind you, they're like probably in their 50s. And they're just calling me a monkey. They're calling me a nigger. They're calling me just everything that you could think of, saying that they want to come fight me or whatever. And yeah, that was day 2 of Russia.
What was it like compared to China?
Two different things, because Chinese will just do stuff without saying it, and then Russia will say it. Like Russians will just say how much they hate black people.
Really? How so? Because you went to China in 2012. I went to China in 2018. So I'm curious, what was the difference in that six-year gap, if not the same?
There's probably the same. China don't change. China hates black people. Mind you, there's a lot of black people from other countries that have done some really stupid things there. A lot of the Nigerians, a lot of the Ghanans, a lot of the, they go
South
in
American
there.
or
No.
or I mean South African.
South Africans, like they go in there and they rape the women. They go in there, they're really violent. I can't tell you how many times I saw Chinese people getting whooped on by black people out there. Same with Russians. So, but they had like, they go in there and they create a bad name for black people. And so, that's probably a lot of where it stems from, on top of it just being cultural. So you have the culture that's like, oh, we don't like anybody that's not like us, on top of these people that come in and do terrible things. And so then culture says, see, look, that's why we don't like them.
Man, here's a quick question, or not even a quick question, but like, how did your view on how black people are treated here in America change once you went overseas compared to how it was now?
Now, some of my black bandmates will probably disagree with me heavily, but I realized how good we have it here. I just don't believe any narrative that's thrown in front of me. Yes, cops have killed black people, but is that the majority? Absolutely not. If you look at facts, statistics, white cops kill white people a lot more than they kill black people. I'm just saying. And that, there's stats for that. I don't want to get too much into that part of it. But what I did realize is we don't have it that bad as compared to other places in the world. And of course, there are other places that have completely integrated black people much better than we have. Like you go to France and like they're part of culture there. Mind you, France went into Africa and did a number there in some of those French-speaking African countries.
Does like having this sort of viewpoint that I think maybe not for me, but maybe for other people listening might be a little shocking. Do you think people in the black community here in the U.S. may have taken your viewpoint in a negative way or anything like that?
Oh yeah, you can go to my Facebook and see some of my old posts and see that they have, but most of them haven't traveled either. That's the big difference is when you travel the world, you get to see that. Or two things. Number one, we have it better. Number two, we have come a long ways. You forget, civil rights movement was 60, 70 years ago. Like, we're not that far. We're not even within 100 years of that. Average lifespan is 60 to 70 years. So all those people that marched, all those people that were a part of that movement are now coming to the end of their lives. And so we are the next wave to move forward. Give or take, I've got another 40, 50 years left. And then I pass that on to the next generation and the next generation, on and so forth. And so we've got to get out of this idea that we are living in the past, because we aren't. And we've got to be able to pass on more positivity, more, and I think that's the problem I have with mainstream Black culture right now, is there's no positivity. It's all, we've been oppressed, we've been this, we've been that. But then I always tell people, I'm like, look, I am a Black guy who grew up in, like, both my parents' Crips. They were running coke up and down in a certain city. I won't say. If you know, you know. But they were, one of my parents is still very heavily active in running drugs. And so I was taken from them, grew up, believe it or not, poor white. I made it out, no college, only have a high school diploma. I have traveled the world, paid for completely. I have traveled probably 15 different countries. I think I've paid maybe for 2 trips. I have seen the world, traveled around doing what I want to do as a musician around the world, then come home, continue to be active in that, and then land a government job. No college degree, no anything. Where else in the world can you say that a Black man can do that?
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel when it comes to the Black community? Because what I see with a lot of communities, because I'm Mexican, so with the Mexican community, I see a lot of bad, but at the same time, they're always pushing their kids towards growth. And I see the Black community being a lot more willing to victimize themselves and play into the race card than to be like, you know what, this is what it is, fuck it. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see a change of attitude would be the best way to say it in the Black community. Like, to me, life is all about your attitude and how you approach it. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of injustices and things that happen, but if you have the right attitude, you can look past that, as we've seen with many people who have come from impoverished countries, such as Elon Musk from South Africa, or yourself, or whoever it may be.
Elon is a crazy story. Like, Elon's a crazy story. South Africa is not a rich country. It is not at all a prevailing country. Like,
do you mind if I interrupt real quick? That thought right there.
Yeah.
I know, like, we were talking about Reddit earlier, but I actually am a part of the Wall Street Bets subreddit now, and one of the things they talked about was shorting, because, you know, they talked about how people were trying to short GameStop, and so they invested into GameStop, created GameStop to be this big stock, made a lot of money, blah, 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 made all these hedge funds lose money, etc. You know the story, hopefully. If not, research it. But there were some people on Wall Street Bets, like one guy was suggesting to short. Basically, shorting is betting that a country, that whatever you're trying to bet on is gonna fail, and they were betting that the stock of South Africa would fail. Yeah, because they're constantly going into so much inflation with their stock, with their price in dollar and everything, that they would lose, value in their country. Mm-hmm. But it's funny to look at that and be like, there's this place that's just losing so much value, and so much shit is going so wrong, and yet the American value can still hold its price.
Well, South Africa did not roll out good COVID regulations or anything. So there was a grip of people dying over there. Like, and I don't say that laughing. I'm just saying, like, and our South African friends will probably kill us.
Can I ask you something, Josh?
What?
There's a comedian that talks about how he's like, you know what? Slavery was fucked up, but I'm glad it existed because otherwise he'd be running away from lions or whatever. It's a joke.
A loaded question that you're about to ask me.
Exactly. So what I'm asking is, how do you feel about slavery in the end because it's like, hey, you're not from where we're sitting and recording this podcast. You're not living a bad life. You know, you get to do music. You get to do audio engineering. There's so many opportunities, as you've said, that you've taken advantage of. And as you've said, you know, there's a lot of things that the African community is kind of playing victim towards, and you're kind of saying, hey, you can still rise above it, right? So what I'm saying is, how do you view this when it comes to
well, slavery? We've got to realize we weren't, and this will be a whole other topic, but we weren't the only slaves. I hate to say it. Read your history books, ladies and gentlemen. The Egyptians have been slaves. The Indians have been slaves. The Jews have been slaves. Everybody has been slaves as at some point in history. So it is. I've always had this argument that slavery is just part of culture. People want to hate me for it, but think of it this way. Here in America, who's working the low-end jobs?
Mexicans. Who's
the ones out in the street corner hustling, making 50 cents off that $10 flour?
Mexicans out of lote, man.
Yeah. In Dubai, who's working for $1,000 a month, all to send home to their family, to not have but 1 month to go home? All the Filipinos and Indians.
Mexicans. And you know what? I have people in my dad's restaurant that have done that thing.
In Dubai?
Oh, no, not in Dubai. Sorry.
Jesus. Same thing.
Indians over there.
Check this out. In China, guess who the working class was there? Filipinos.
Yeah.
You go in, they're busting tables, they're, little bands or whatever. No days off, working for a very small wage. Slavery it looks different because they're getting paid. So all that to say,
indentured servitude.
Yeah, slavery is cultural. It's more comfortable when you throw money at it. So now to answer your question, as it being a part of history, a part of what happens, yes, it's terrible how it happened. The process of slavery was probably not fun. Grabbing a boat, getting sold out by your own friends, and getting put on a boat, sold. Now, here's what nobody talks about. This is what's crazy. Everybody thinks that they went straight from Africa to America. No. West Africa, they rode that coast up, stopped off in the UK or Ireland, sold them there, and then came down the boat. Like, there's no way that they just hopped from Africa straight to America. It's just, that's not how it worked.
Right.
So if we're going to attack America for slavery, we have to attack the UK. We have to attack Ireland, Scotland. It's how I'm a McClanahan. McClanahan's my actual last name because the boat stopped. So all of that to say, the outcome of it has been rewarding for my personal life, because if not, I can't say that I'd have the same lifestyle if I lived in Africa. I've been to Africa. I was in Kenya, and to say that I hated it personally.
Why?
The mentality there was very much.
How so?
I get off the plane there, and there's this dude that's standing next to my luggage. And he's like, I pulled it off the belt for you, so now you have to pay me to get it. I'm like, no, I didn't ask you to pull it off the belt for me. He's like, no, you pay me. You pay me. Fortunately, I'm bigger than every Kenyan ever, so I literally just pushed him aside, grabbed my luggage, and walked. But that mentality of always trying to get a dollar.
Trying to hustle,
yeah. And with, no respect. That got annoying. But that's very much their culture. And so, for instance, we were on one of the buses there, driving through a neighborhood, and my ex goes, hey, put your phone away. I'm like, why? She was like, they'll reach through the window and grab your phone and take it and run off. Like, just stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, it's just way different than how it is here when it comes to how you see safety, security, or just how people interact in everyday life.
yeah, I'm sure you saw the same in South Africa.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, South Africa, you got to know how to barter with people. You got to know how to be friendly with people. I almost got in a fight with someone just because I was American and they wanted to prove that they were just as good as me when I'm like, yo, I don't give a fuck. I just want to drink.
That sounds about right.
With all this said, like, when it comes to all the social injustices you've gone, how do you see it compared to America? Because to me, like, I don't see America as that bad because a lot of the issues it has is social issues. Even though, yes, we do interfere a lot, like even Biden, like bombing Syria.
Let's talk about that for 2 seconds. Can we?
Sure, go ahead with Biden bombing Syria.
Just hear me out. Hi, I'm Biden. I will remove college debt. I will
Stimulus check.
You $2,000. What else? I'm going to bring peace. Blah 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 blah. All these empty promises. When asked after getting in the office, so I'm not going to do that, or we can't do that, or that, and then boom. You know what we are going to do? We're going to bomb Syria.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. He might actually be my favorite president because of that. Because it's just,
he said, "Make America great again" or something like that. So.
But it's funny. Like all my liberal and like Democrat friends are not happy. They are also not saying anything. I'm like, y'all voted the machine back into office.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. The fact that our first president, George Washington, said, "Hey, when he left the office, don't make political parties." Yeah, we have political parties, and it's dividing us more than ever, especially with the current, what would you say, news cycle, portraying things in a negative light. So, I mean, how do you go about this? You have so much shit. I look at Biden when it comes to like Hunter Biden's laptop that he had with all this incriminating information selling to Russia and everything, and yet people don't care. It seems like whenever it's a right wing, like everything seems so not even right wing. Sorry, my bad. Left wing. Everything seems so left wing that if any sort of left wing miscalculation, I guess you could say, happens, people don't care. Whether it's Biden, bombing Syria, nobody cares. Biden not giving us a stimulus check, even though he said he would give it to us within the first week that he was in office. Oh, nobody cares. Like, people just keep going because they're winning. It seems that way. Because I don't. Here, let me ask you this, Josh. Do you think we'll ever be in a position where there will be so much right-wing power as there was with Biden? Because I don't think there will be. I think this is the permanent stop. And I'm sorry for the hiccups, people.
What are you asking me?
Do you think this will be the last time that the right-wing politics will be or have as much power as it did when Trump was in power? Because it seems to me that the left-wing politics is gonna be dominating for a while because there is such a big backlash. For every reaction, you have to have an equal reaction.
Well, you got to think of it this way too. So, was Trump a god amongst mortal men? No, he was a monster in his own right? Like, we have to admit that. And me being a conservative black man, I have to understand where the wrong was. Was Trump the upfront leader we needed? No, he was the background leader we needed. So when it came to managing China, when it came to trying to solve the North Korean problem, when it came to denuclearizing Iran, or when it came to negotiating things in the Middle East, Trump was a beast at that. When it came to dealing with people, no. When it came to dealing with anybody that doesn't speak his language, no bueno. So I think, number one, the problem with us, the way we run presidency, is we don't do what's right for us as a country. We gauge everything from an emotional value. Like, do I like what he stands for? Do I like, how he talks to people? How does he treat women? And this is why the Democrats win, because they cater to the emotions of people.
I agree with that.
So they will always have the edge up, as to where the conservative mindset is, I just want to work. I want less government in my business, less taxes. And hey, listen, you want to live your life being gay? Cool. Just don't badger me about it. Meanwhile, the Dems all run on, oh, the world is racist, emotional. Trans, gay rights, emotional. Women rights, emotional. Not saying that any of these things are not important, but I'm saying why they will always cater or always have the upper hand here is because they cater to emotions.
Well, something that I found very interesting with my ex-girlfriend, which we can get into later, or talking to other people, other women, for example, that were very anti-Trump, was whenever I told them, hey, I support him in these areas, they were a lot more. They stopped and were willing to listen, maybe because they knew me, but they were willing to listen. Okay, why is this person that is so deplorable by the news? Why is this person supportive of this? And to explain it, because to me it was like Trump was almost like a blockade, if not just a barrier for a time period of very left-wing open politics that didn't really matter. For example, like, let's say open borders, for example. One thing that I talked to you about was that, I think open borders will be a very interesting thing if the Democrats come in office. Like, Biden right now, as we speak, is making it more accessible for people to come in, post-COVID. But what's very interesting to me is seeing, like, okay, who can come in and who can come out, right? Because if we go with the Democratic view of it, is we can let anybody in. I'm like, cool. Well, who's trying to come in right now? Let's say Latinos, right? Mm-hmm. Which would make the Latino vote way stronger, and make the black vote, which the Democrats want a lot of, or try to strive towards getting, will diminish, right? Because people will say, oh, I don't want the black vote because now the Latino vote is taking over. So Democrats will have to say, well, what matters more? Opening the borders and letting the Latino vote matter more, or closing the borders, going against what we say, so that the black vote matters, or they leave them in the dust and just cater towards what they want? Because when you look at cities like Detroit, or any sort of major city that's run by Democrats that say, hey, Republicans are evil, they're destroying your thing. And don't get me wrong, you see a lot of evil, when you see like Ted Cruz leaving Texas with the whole snowstorm. But
my question to you there, and most people don't understand how our Senate runs and works, is what was he going to do?
Oh, you're talking about Ted Cruz?
Yeah, what was he going to do?
Well, nothing in that situation. But just going back to what I'm saying is just when you see people doing these sort of things and doing all of this, it creates sympathy and animosity towards the situation, because in the one hand it can be seen as a good thing, and on the other hand, some people, like for example the Ted Cruz, can see it as the bad thing, because it's like you said, what could he have done in that situation? But the thing is, like, just like Governor Newsom in California,
trash,
is like, oh well, I'm eating outside in the open with no mask during COVID pandemic, but it's okay.
He wasn't eating outside. He was inside.
Or he was inside, which is even worse.
Yeah, inside with all the health advisors and everything, having a whole little dinner. Like, how do you sit there and lock everybody down and do that kind of stuff? Like, that's the biggest difference between Newsom and Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is just trying to be on the Mexican beach, drinking margaritas, avoiding the snowstorm.
Well, that's a good point. It's just like, what's the difference? Because you have both are leaders of their state, And they're setting bad examples in a sense.
To Ted's defense, here's my question. What could have he done? The mayor, the governor, and everybody else hadn't called for help. They had just, and that's what he's there for. He's a senator, so he can only act on a federal level. He can't act on a anything before that. So if the governor had said, oh no, now we need government assistance, blah, 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 then he could have done something. But to your point, yes, I agree. Maybe you shouldn't have gone during your snowstorm, buddy. Yeah. And then Newsom's just a hypocrite. Newsom also comes from a family of politicians. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Newsom is Pelosi's nephew, who also is somehow related to the former governor. I can't remember if that's Brown. But it's just like you have this whole family of politics or politicians. And yeah, that's not fun to deal with because you'll never get rid of them. So, yeah, Daniel ran off to the bathroom. Fun times during this podcast. I could sit here and talk to myself. I'll probably edit this out. So, here he comes. How was your bathroom experience there, buddy?
Sorry, what did I miss?
Oh, I was just talking about the difference between Ted Cruz and Newsom, and how Newsom's family are all politicians, how Pelosi's his auntie, and then I can't remember, it's either Brown or somebody else is also his uncle.
Well, what's so funny about Ted Cruz is people are ready to kick him out of office because of what he did with the K-Coon. They want to get rid of him just like how people are petitioning to get rid of Newsom.
Which, hey, you know what? I get it. I am down. Here's why I wouldn't get rid of Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz is really coming after all the internet, like censorship and the private companies. And he's kind of leading the forefront on that. And if we want any freedom on the internet to be ourselves again, then that's, he's one of the main contributors for that. The thing about politicians you got to think about is they're not normal people. Just like celebrities aren't normal people, politicians are equally not normal people. So they're not the blue collar individuals. They don't have the same frame of thought as you do. And most of them just need a break. Like, this is why I'm a huge believer in term limits. Because you get all these old people, like, for instance, Pelosi. How old is Nancy Pelosi?
And she got reelected.
Yeah. I wish somebody would come and take her job. She's not relevant. She's not relevant to our culture. She's not relevant to anything, but she holds so much power as a speaker. Like, term limits. Straight up, give them 4 years tops, like the president, have to get reelected every 2 years. I'm in full agreement of that.
Well, now just jumping to a side subject is because now you're. I see that you're doing more gigs, Josh. How do you see the gig economy coming?
How did you jump? That's impressive. That was impressive. That was just like, yeah, term limits. I don't want to talk about that. So you're gigging.
Yeah, bro. It's called different subject matter. No, because I'm actually really curious about this because now that because last time me and the keyboardist that I was gigging overseas with, it was the keyboardist who's not gigging at all. We were talking. We're like, okay, well, I don't really know anybody that's gigging, but now it seems like you're starting to ramp up. Not even ramp up, but it's the tracks are. You got some actual tires for the tires. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I'm gigging. I don't know if I necessarily stopped. I switched it up to doing a lot of recording sessions. And so those remained during COVID. There was a lot less. But my live gigs went out the window.
Well, my question is, how do you see the gig economy now with COVID? Because I saw a live band in Anaheim a few months ago. But the thing is, consistency, actually making a living off of it. Because to me, I'm like, this is dead for a while. At least here in California, I don't see much going on. Even people in Texas are like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing a gig," or there. It's not. I don't see anything that's consistent enough to make a living off of, let alone do it enough to even feel gratified in the craft.
Everything's changed. That's for sure. There's not a lot of work right now. Just straight up. I don't know in what capacity that will come back, and I don't know when. It seems like things are coming back, but I'm not sure.
How so do you feel, though, that things are coming back? What makes you say that?
Probably because I've started to start working a lot more.
Is that just optimism because you yourself are working? Because to me, I'm like, there still aren't the same venues going on.
Well,
there still
venues
aren't
are
the
gonna
same.
die.
How so? Explain yourself.
You gotta think.
I mean, I have my own ideas, but you tell me.
90% of these venues, studios, they don't have, and especially in Hollywood, NoHo, Studio City, DTLA, they don't have the big backing of a giant corporation. So a lot of those things, Hotel Cafe, the Troubadour, Peppermint, they are going to shut their doors because they don't have the backing. They didn't pause rent. They've had nobody in there. There's nothing they could do. Hotel Cafe is doing like these little live stream shows out of there, which hopefully that's turned lucrative.
Do you see any solution for this?
Open it back up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in
the same boat. I'm like, hey man, like,
you got to think of it this way. The only way all this comes back, because there's two things. Musicians are hungry to play. Number two, the normal people are hungry to get out of the house.
Exactly.
And so I myself, even as a normal human, even though I'm not normal, I'll go pay to watch somebody play. I'll every weekend, my wife and I would be like, yo, let's go. This person's playing this week. Okay, we're going to go there this week and we're going to go see this people, blah, 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 blah. I would make it a point to go do that. And I know hundreds of other people that would do the same because they're so hungry to get out of the house and be around people.
But, I mean, I feel the same way about what you're saying. But to me, it's just like, I feel you and I are both in the circumstance where we're meeting people who are willing to go out, but I think we just don't see enough of the people who aren't willing to go out, who are the people who push back. That maybe it's a minority, I don't know, but most of the people I meet are ready to go out, ready to go do what they want to do. They don't care about catching COVID. They're ready to do what they need to live their life as it was before.
Well, COVID, I hate to say this, it's got a 98% survival rate.
I mean, I think it was like a 1% fatality rate.
1% fatality rate. So you get it. There's a 1% chance you'll die. I'm not trying to lessen the.
Yeah, because we're at 500,000 deaths. Even if you were recorded at this time in the deaths, it'd be like 30,000 deaths if you were to restart the year.
Yeah, but how many deaths did we have to flu and all those other things? Like we've completely thrown those out the window. And I don't want to start a COVID conversation, but all I'm saying is people are starting to go so crazy in their houses, in their places, over something that has a 1% fatality rate.
So Josh, let me ask you this. How are you just changing your life to fit this new COVID world? Because obviously, like how you're saying, gigs aren't what they used to be.
Nope.
What are you doing to readjust to this new world?
I went out and got myself a little job. Mm-hmm. I spend a lot of money on things I don't necessarily need to make me happy. And yeah, I got a dog. My dog makes me happy.
But how do you see the future of the gig economy? Is it just
Like I said,
if someone was just starting in 2020, it was like, fuck, I just started doing music for real, trying to make a living, and now I can't get a gig.
Okay,
like,
number one.
What would you say to them?
Number one, why would you ever start doing music for real during this? I say the same thing to people that are still trying to gig, people that are still trying to make it in the entertainment realm during COVID. And I'm like, why? There's literally no point. There's nothing you can do to make enough money while 98% of this is shut down. So that would be my first thing is no, find something else while maintaining your skills. So that way when it does come back, you're ready to hop on the train and go. I know so many people that moved out here during COVID because it was cheaper. And I'm like, but there's no work. So I would tell everybody that's trying to make it now, don't. It's you're going to do yourself more disservice. Stack your money, work whatever it is you have to do, and prep for it to be over.
So does that mean, because I have so many musician friends that moved back to Texas or moved to Nashville or whatever it may be, does that mean when this pandemic comes back to normal, they would be moving back to find something new?
Well, you got to think Texas is going to open far before we will. Far before we will. In fact, they gig in Texas currently. There's gigs.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying, because of the snowstorm and things like that, will they be slowing down, or what's the situation? Just what's the future for music in general?
Listen, if I was doing music how I was a year and some change ago, I would have moved. I would have moved to Tennessee or Austin, somewhere where I could actually gig. I would have left. Because LA, no offense, it's so liberal that they're going to keep it shut down as long as there's any amount of threat.
Yeah, no, I believe that. I think they're going to shut things down. I mean, our mutual friend has a brewery, or is a part of a brewery that was shut down, and the person who shut it down did a little dance, and they ended up being opened back up 20 minutes later, because a lot of these health inspectors and stuff don't even know the rules and are just doing it to like appease this sort of quota, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a whole problem in itself. That's honestly a whole problem in itself, because you have all these rogue health inspectors and people that, honest to God, they also have a little man complex where they're just like, oh, I can shut you down, so I'm shutting you down. Nobody go in.
Well, I think you and me talked about this, how this COVID thing, if you just change COVID to Jews, it'd be very easily World War II, because you can see how people are very easily manipulated into thinking like, oh, this is the right thing. Just like how the health inspector's like, oh, I used to come from this low social status, and now I have the power to shut places down.
I'm the man.
Yeah, exactly. That you can just, oh, this is what it is. This is how it is. I'm going to close things down. I'm going to run things the way I want because I'm the one in charge.
Yeah. It's a shame. I honestly was hoping that this could have been a time for all of us to unite and do better. But this has only shown a light on how big we fail as people.
Why do you think that is?
I feel that on both sides of the spectrum, people are just selfish. Straight up. People are selfish. I look at it this way. You have the maskers and the non-maskers. How big of a debate is that? Where both sides is just selfish.
I think you're right in the sense of when it comes to a group mentality, we definitely become very selfish, which is why something like Tesla, for example, has succeeded, where you have, okay, I'm going to solve the pollution problem by making a product that feeds into people's selfishness of making a product that is not only good, but feeds those selfish aspects of like, oh, it's a pretty car, it looks good, it's desirable, so that, you know, you can move forward in society.
I can co-sign that if you'd like. That was beautiful.
But I'm just saying, because to me, it's just like, hey, we're constantly trying to make, because I think Elon Musk figured it out. Because when you look at when you look at how we are as individuals, like for example, nuclear, like, oh, how are we going to kill each other? Nuclear bombs. Well, that could have already happened. Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK said, I'm not going to push the button. And to me, that shows that as individuals, as people, we have the morality to say, hey, that's not what the path I want to go down.
Listen, do you know how sad I'd be if JFK had hit that button?
Well, we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't have Cuban rum, Cuban cigars.
Yo. Well, that's why he bought some before he closed the embargo.
And I can't say this because I'm married now, but Cuban women.
Yeah. Well, what I have to say about that is just because of him being able to say that, it makes me more worried for things that involve a mob mentality, such as, for example, how bad the pollution is on this planet. But then you have people like Elon Musk who, to me, it seems like to solve these mob sort of mentality issues, you need to have something that feeds the ego, such as how Elon Musk, how I said, makes something that is desirable, feeds the ego, makes you want to buy it and go out and get that new items, such as his new Model X, Model S, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like, okay, now I have this product that is not only helping the environment, but it's also feeding the ego of the individual so that it feeds that mob mentality, which helps fix the issue. And I feel like as long as we have people that can figure out, okay, how do we feed the basic human needs that one has on top of solving the issue, then we can solve it. Because if we just make a car, but it looks stupid, it's not a pussy magnet, as you would say, then people aren't going to buy it as much. And I think Elon Musk is really not, or just Tesla as a company. I'm not going to give all the credit to Elon, but Tesla as a company has figured out that issue. But it's just very interesting to me to see the difference between how we work as an individual and how we work as a group.
Yeah. Well, it's like a group project at school, right? You have like 5 out of the 5 people, 2 people do the majority of the work.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just weird. Like, group mentality is a weird psychological game because we as people always need a leader.
Yeah.
And if that leader is not who we choose it to be, that's when all hell breaks loose.
And I guess that's what's the problem with the U.S., right? As a whole, just to kind of end this podcast on, is the fact that we don't have that kind of leader, that kind of, I guess you could say, as an adult that kind of shows us, hey, this is right from wrong. This is what the right path is. Right now, we just, we don't, because they don't have that sort of adult aspiration aspect to them, because all of our leaders were like old, or we don't care about them. We don't want them to tell us what to do. And the people who we do care about, like Elon Musk, like when they say, "Hey, do this or that," I'm like, "Oh yeah," that. Because the stock goes up. You know what I mean? Every time Elon says something or does something crazy. Mm-hmm. But I think this is a good point to end on. It's just the fact that things change, and the way we view things change, and it can be for a positive or a negative, but the fact is we have to keep talking about it and be able to open up and say, hey, this can help things or these can change things.
I agree. Conversation is the way. When all the BLM stuff happened last year, I had to get on a few of my friends because all they wanted to do is sit and yell at people. And I was like, hold on. The only way change is going to happen is not from outrage. It's through conversation and relationship. And so it's the same thing with politics. We're at this space where both sides have been alienated from each other for so long that the only saving grace could be pure 100% intentional adult conversation, to where it's just like, yo, we've got to find where we agree and where we have to agree to disagree and be okay with it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to end, Josh. Couldn't have said it better myself. Anyways, this has been an episode of the DP podcast. I'd like to thank Josh for being on the podcast, bro. I appreciate you, bro.
No problem, man. Can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, let's keep drinking. Anyways, peace out, everybody.
Peace.